One was found wrapped in linen tied with human hair and stuffed with fennel, still intact. You spot a crack in the wall beside the latrine, tiny but wide enough to hide something. Inside, a thin strip of fabric, red, torn. You leave it there. Some secrets aren't for lifting. You return to the corridor, your mind still echoing with whispered curses, bad poetry, and the soft sound of sponge water trickling downhill. Even in the most transactional place in Pompeii, you learn how the human body, its hungers, its embarrassments, its small rebellions, always finds a way to remind us. This was real. This was lived. And even the gods took bathroom breaks. You return to the main hallway just as the first rays of pre-dawn light begin to stretch across the stone walls. It's not bright, not yet, but the quality of the dark has changed. Less velvet, more ash. Like the night is beginning to exhale. And as it does, the lupanar begins its slow shift into morning. You've now stayed long enough to witness something most clients never see: what happens after the last door closes, after the final coin is dropped, when the brothel resets itself like a stage between acts. The silence is heavier now. Not the hush of pleasure, but the fatigue of repetition. Like the walls themselves are tired. Room by room, the curtains sway open. A man stumbles out of room 2, adjusting his belt, not looking back. He doesn't say goodbye. He doesn't have to. Ilea leans in the doorway, rubbing her temple. Her braid is loose. Her smile is long gone. She watches him leave like she's watching water boil. It means something, but not much. She closes the curtain. You step with her into the quiet of post-performance. Here's your historical fact: Roman brothels were often busiest during the late afternoon and evening hours. Morning was reserved for rest, repairs, and for many workers, the only real time they had to themselves. Sort of. Except to themselves still meant inside, on-site, available if summoned. In the main courtyard, the matrona is already up, of course. She's seated with her tablet and her mug of barley brew, scanning yesterday's tallies. Occasionally, she frowns and scratches something out. Occasionally, she mouths a name as if testing its weight. Behind her, the laundress pours steaming water into a basin. Linen stained from gods know what gets dunked, scrubbed, beaten, rinsed. You can't tell if the water turns red from wine or something else. Does it matter? Not here. Here's your quirky tidbit: some brothel workers had to wash their own linens before sleeping, one final task to earn rest. Those too tired or sore could barter with the laundress. A comb, a trinket, a future favor. Barter never ends. Even dreams cost something. Flora is in the corner now, using a shard of mirror to pluck stray hairs from her chin. She hums something off-key and slow. "You going to sleep?" someone asks. She shrugs. Might wait for the baker. The baker, you think. Apparently he passes by around this time every morning. Leaves a roll. Sometimes a fig. Sometimes he just waves. You realize not everyone who visits this place pays in coin. Back in room 7, Vibia sits on the edge of her slab legs, dangling one sandal half on. She's writing something on a scrap of wax. Not graffiti, not a message. Just practice. She mouths the letters silently, shapes them with her tongue. A name, her own maybe, or the one she wants next. Here's where the scholars argue again: did brothel workers have time to learn to read, to write? Some say yes, especially those who were freedwomen or former slaves. Others believe most were illiterate, relying only on verbal memory and symbolic tokens. And yet, you've seen enough wax tablets, enough carved names, enough sly inscriptions scratched beneath bed frames to know somebody was writing. And they didn't do it for decoration. You step into the corner alcove where a few of the women have already fallen asleep, half-dressed, limbs tangled, mouths open, one snoring softly. Someone's using her sandal as a pillow. Someone else has tucked a rolled-up tunic behind her head. No blankets left. They're all still being washed. The incense has long burned out. But in here, there's peace. For now. You hear a knock, soft, hesitant. Too early. The Matrona doesn't even rise. "Come back after breakfast," she calls flatly. Footsteps retreat down the alley. You're struck by this strange in-between time, the liminal hour where no one is fully awake and no one is fully gone. Where the brothel becomes something between a home and a holding cell. Not for pleasure, for pause. You glance at the graffiti near room 4. Someone's added a new line, "I dream of silence." Below it, in different handwriting, "I dream of figs." Relatable. Here's your fringe detail. Archaeologists found traces of charcoal sketches beneath layers of wall plaster images and writing that were painted over repeatedly as new workers arrived. It was a living document, a palimpsest of passing lives. You can still see some of it now if you squint. A faint outline of a cat, a barely there name Cestia, a joke scratched too lightly to read. Even time didn't care enough to preserve the punchline, and yet here it lingers, a ghost trapped between stone layers. Outside, the city of Pompeii stirs. Bakers fire ovens, fishmongers yell, carts clatter. But inside the lupanar, everything slows, everything sinks. The workers curl into corners. The Matrona makes one last note. And you stay with them just a little longer, until the curtains fall shut, until the sandals are kicked off, until the dreams come, whatever they are. You sit now in the stillness that only arrives after the final sigh and before the city's full roar. The brothel, once alive with moans and murmurs, is now a body at rest. You can almost hear it breathe. But even in this quiet, there's one final player you haven't met properly yet. Not the Matrona, not the clients, not even the workers. It's the building itself. The lupanar. Its bones are brick and plaster. Its skin mural and moss. Its soul. Well, that depends who you ask. But now's your chance to really explore its architecture. The physical design, the layout, the strategy behind Pompeii's most famous house of flesh. You begin outside where the lupanar sits, tucked away near the corner of Vicolo del Balcone Pensile, a narrow street where the shadows stretch long even at midday. You run your hand across the outer wall. It's peppered with crude carvings, sun-faded graffiti, and deep scratches where some client, drunk or lovesick, etched a name again and again. Maybe his, maybe hers. Just past the door, the building splits, a T-shaped hallway. 5 rooms on each side. A tight stairwell leads upward to a smaller floor, 2 more rooms. A windowless alcove and a narrow balcony barely wide enough for a cat. You step inside again, looking with fresh eyes. Here's your historical fact. The lupanar of Pompeii is the only purpose-built brothel discovered in the city so far. Others may have existed, but this one, it wasn't repurposed. It was designed from the ground up for exactly what it became. The walls are thick brick coated in coarse plaster, painted with erotic frescoes that seem to hover in motion even now. Each fresco depicts a different act, a different pose. But they're not there to arouse. They're advertisements, previews, a visual menu for a mostly illiterate population. Clients could point at what they wanted, no confusion, no awkwardness. Just gesture, pay, proceed. You pause beneath one of the frescoes, a man reclining, while a woman sits atop him, laughing, mid-motion. And you realize this was marketing. Roman SEO. You chuckle. Imagine Yelp reviews scratched into the plaster room 2, warm hands, cold wine. Avoid room 5, afternoon. Flora has the best laugh. And yes, those reviews existed, in graffiti. Here's your quirky tidbit: the lupanar featured masonry beds built directly into the walls, stone slabs slightly raised, sometimes with niches below, to store wine oil or tools. Comfort wasn't the point. Durability was. You can't break a stone bed, but you can bruise your hip on one. Each room was just large enough to lie down in, just small enough to keep business moving. Some had tiny wall shelves. A few had candle niches. Most had only the slab, a curtain, and whatever atmosphere the worker could generate. And here's where historians still argue: was the brothel ventilated properly? The structure had few windows, relying on doors and high vents to circulate air. But in the heat of Pompeii's summer, between the oil, the wine, the sweat, the whispers, you can imagine it must have been stifling. You climb the stairs now, feet echoing on worn steps. At the top, 2 rooms. The upper floor. Less foot traffic. More discretion. Some believe these were for wealthier clients, or even for regulars who paid a premium. The frescoes here are fainter. Not more modest, just older. Scratched, repainted, tired. One shows a woman reclining, holding a mirror, hair unpinned. Not in action, just resting. A rare image. Was this a real worker? Did she pose for it? Was it sentimental? You'll never know. You step onto the balcony now. Below, the alley curves out of view. A dog barks. A boy chases a hoop past the door. The brothel is silent, but the city beyond is already moving, oblivious to what happens within these walls. And perhaps that was the point of the architecture, to hide nothing, yet reveal only what was profitable. Here's your fringe detail beneath the lupanar's floor. A hidden drainage system was discovered, designed to redirect wastewater and runoff from the latrines. It's not glamorous, but it shows foresight. Whoever built this place didn't just care about walls. They cared about what leaked beneath them. You descend the stairs again and pause at the entrance, looking back one last time. 10 rooms, 2 floors, 1 courtyard, a bath bucket, a fresco of Priapus, a scratch on the wall that simply says, "She smiled at me." You smile too. Because now you see the lupanar not as ruins, not as scandal, but as a machine built for repetition, survival, and memory. It did its job well, too well, which is why it still whispers, even now. You remain in the doorway just a moment longer, absorbing the feel of the walls, the weight of the stone beneath your feet. But now something else pulls at you, less structure, more soul. If the brothel's architecture is its body, then what remains unspoken, unwritten, unseen must be its mythology. The lupanar is more than brick and fresco. It's a symbol, a whisper through centuries, a scandal passed like a secret between school children, tourists, archaeologists, and YouTube hosts. And tonight, you dive into the myths, misunderstandings, and pop culture myths surrounding Pompeii's most infamous house. Let's start with the obvious. Here's your historical fact. Pompeii had many buildings where sex was sold, but only the lupanar was specifically designed for it. That didn't stop rumors from attaching themselves to every suggestive mural in the city. Some villas with erotic art were wrongly labeled as brothels. One bakery had a faded fresco of Venus and Mars and was dubbed the Aphrodite oven. Why? Because modern visitors often assume sex mural equals sex house. Not so fast. You glance at one particular myth, that the frescoes above each bed were menus assigned to the specific room. That's partially true, but also not really. The frescoes may not match the worker's preference or service. They were general and sometimes aspirational, like restaurants that show you pictures of a meal that looks nothing like what arrives. Still, the idea persists. You remember a tourist murmuring, "I'd pick room 4, as if that made any difference. Here's your quirky tidbit. The brothel graffiti includes jokes, slurs, praise, and longing, but modern translations often clean them up or distort them. For example, one carving reads, "Successus loves Iris who doesn't care," which modern tour guides often dramatize into a tragic romance. But ancient Pompeians probably laughed at it like a bad pickup line. Another myth that brothels were outlawed by moral emperors. Not quite. Brothels were legal under Roman law, regulated, taxed, even licensed under certain emperors. Augustus, the so-called family values emperor, didn't close brothels, he taxed them more aggressively. Classic politics. There's a strange dignity in that, a terrible kind of fairness. You move deeper into the mythos, a popular modern belief that brothel workers were all slaves. Also not entirely true. Many were, but some were freed women, or even born citizens working by choice, desperation, or a mix of both. And some gained enough coin or favor to earn manumission and open shops, taverns, or yes, brothels of their own. Which leads you to another myth that none of them ever escaped. You pass a scrap of graffiti that reads, "Methe lives now in Herculaneum, with wine and no men." We don't know who Methe was, or if she really made it out. But someone carved her name here. Someone believed her story mattered. You pause beside a broken fresco half erased probably by weather or time. It once showed a girl reclining with a flute in her lap. Now it's mostly dust. But scratched beneath it, she played music when they let her. It's not sexy. It's not tragic. It's just human. And that's what gets lost most often in the myths, the humanity. This wasn't a house of sex. It was a house of routine. A house of performance. A house where people laughed at bad jokes, stole olives from clients, plucked their eyebrows, prayed before the fourth man of the night. And sometimes, yes, fell in love. And sometimes, faked it. You want a fringe detail, all right. This one's real. A small bronze coin was found near the rear latrine stamped with a donkey mounting a man. Archaeologists debated whether it was a joke, coin, a curse, or just really bad luck. Some say it was tossed in anger. Others say someone dropped it by accident. But one theory, it was a mock payment, a way of saying, "You're not worth real money." Even here, insult had currency. You stand in the middle of the corridor again and look at the space around you. So much of what people believe about Pompeii's brothel is shaped by modern desires, modern shame, modern curiosity. We project, we sanitize, we giggle. We imagine this place as an orgy, a tragedy, a dirty joke, a museum piece, but rarely as what it actually was, a workplace. A building where survival wore lipstick, carried incense, and faked smiles between coughs. You glance up at a crumbling beam. Carved into the plaster above it are the words, "She told me her real name. I forgot it." And in that line, all the myth, all the reality, all the loss. The brothel has shifted again. Not in structure, not in noise, but in feel. The day has fully arrived. Sunlight now filters across the threshold, painting the stone floor in streaks of pale gold. Even the dust motes seem to float more lazily. Pompeii is awake, and so is the lupanar. But the night's stories haven't vanished. They've just gone quiet, folded into corners, and painted into walls. Because now you're going to do what few visitors ever truly do, read the walls. Not just glance at the frescoes or snicker at the graffiti, but really read them. Let them speak. This house has a written memory scratched, painted, and whispered onto plaster. Let's start with the basics. Here's your historical fact: more than 150 pieces of graffiti have been documented inside the lupanar. Names, insults, boasts, regrets. Some are carved carefully, others scrawled mid-motion. The walls speak if you know how to listen. Room 3. You run your fingers across one of the most famous etchings. Restituta, take off your tunic, please, and show us your lovely hips. Charming, right? But read it again. Someone wasn't just being crude. They were remembering, recalling something they couldn't stop thinking about. The curve of a moment, a shared joke, a request that became graffiti instead of a letter. You step into room 5. Another name, Successus, over and over. Successus was here, many times, and just below it, Successus, don't brag. You cried after Flora. You chuckle. Here's your quirky tidbit. The walls of the brothel became conversation threads. One person would carve a message and others would respond days, weeks, even years later. Ancient comment sections, a 1st century group chat. Room 8 features something different. I paid 2 asses for Thalea, worth every sesterce. Below it, a liar. She charged 3. Someone even drew a tiny donkey between the lines just to emphasize the joke. You admire the pettiness. Now, room 1, there's something poetic here. Faint but legible. Here I forgot who I was, for a while. No one replies to that one. You wonder if anyone dared. Here's where historians still argue: were these messages authentic client writings, or staged, carved by workers or owners to create an atmosphere? Some say they were marketing, others say they were honest. Maybe both. Maybe it doesn't matter, because the effect is the same. The walls remember what people want to forget. You spot a different kind of graffiti now, symbols, not words. A fish, a bird, a hand holding a flower. Some say these were personal marks, calling cards used by workers to claim their rooms or commemorate a specific moment. Others think they were doodles, or wishes, or maybe spells. One symbol stands out, a triangle with 3 dots inside, found in 4 rooms. Same shape, same size. You don't know what it means. No one does. But someone carved it, carefully, repeatedly. You glance above one of the beds. Someone has written, "Priapus, protect this house." Ah, yes. Priapus, the Roman god of fertility, often depicted with an enormous confidence. Here's your fringe detail. Statues of Priapus were sometimes placed near entrances, not just for humor, but to ward off evil and keep the coin flowing. Kind of like a very graphic good luck charm. You can still see his image faintly near the lupanar's front entrance. His eyes long faded, his smile strangely smug. And above him, in nearly invisible script, he sees everything, but never speaks. Now that's unsettling. You exit the room and lean into the hallway wall where one of the deepest carvings sits at waist level. She told me her name. I forgot it. You've seen this one before, but now you understand it better. It's not a joke. It's not a complaint. It's an admission. He forgot her name, but not the moment. He forgot who she was, but not how he felt. This entire place is built on that tension, memory versus transaction, intimacy versus forgetting, a name versus a number. You trail your fingers across a final graffito, just 4 words: Flora danced. I stayed. Nothing else. No date. No price. Just presence. Flora danced. He stayed. And then he left this behind. Proof that he had, if only for a moment, witnessed something. And maybe that's the whole purpose of the Lupanar's walls. Not to seduce, not to scandalize, but to say, this happened. We were here, and we mattered for a night. You stand in the center of the brothel now, just where the hallway branches into its narrow arms, and let yourself absorb the weight of everything this place has shown you. The Lupanar, despite all the centuries, hasn't stopped breathing. Its walls still hum with laughter, curses, sighs, with secrets that survived the ash, the tourists, the textbooks. And now you understand what remains when all the curtains fall and the final coin clinks to the floor. What endures is not the pleasure, it's the endurance itself. You glance into room 4, where someone has left a small bowl of figs on the slab, fresh with one already bitten. Not left by a client. A gesture, maybe. A gift. A superstition. Outside, the street noises are fully alive now. Wheels on stone, shouting in Latin. A market bell rings. But inside, the brothel has gone quiet again. Not because it's empty, but because it's resting, gathering its breath for another night. You follow that breath into the back corner, where Ilea lies curled with her shawl wrapped up around her shoulders. She's not asleep, but close. Her eyes are half-lidded, her fingers still smeared with old coal. Beside her, a folded piece of wax, not scratched with graffiti, but her own writing. Maybe a letter, maybe a dream. She notices you, doesn't smile, just nods. Because you understand now, this place doesn't need sympathy. It doesn't ask for pity. It asks only to be seen without mockery, without sensationalism. You look around one last time. 10 rooms, one hallway, a goddess who never blinks, a Matrona who sees everything, workers who dance and scrape and laugh and cry and pray in corners where gods no longer visit. And yet, there's something holy here in the way people survive under the weight of transaction, in the way they scratch names into stone, daring memory to fade. Here's your final historical fact. When Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, this brothel, like most of Pompeii, was buried in ash and forgotten for centuries. But when it was unearthed, its stories were already waiting. Not as bones, not as relics, but as voices, etched in stone, scrawled in laughter, softened by time. Here's your final quirky tidbit. The very word lupanar comes from lupa, meaning she-wolf, a euphemism for a prostitute in ancient Rome. But it also echoes the she-wolf who suckled Romulus and Remus, founders of Rome. Even here, at the edge of society's shadow, you find the roots of civilization. In survival, in myth, in women who howl. And finally, here's your last fringe detail. Archaeologists once found a pair of sandals hidden in the wall behind room 9, small, worn, and stuffed with dried lavender. No one knows why, but someone placed them there with care. A ritual, a goodbye, or just a moment of softness inside a life built on performance. You step into the doorway again. The sun has moved. The hallway glows golden. A worker begins to hum a tune, low off key, tired. The Matrona opens her ledger. Someone lights a lamp. And you, listener, you step back. Out of the brothel. Out of Pompeii. But not without carrying something with you. Because tonight, you listened. You didn't judge. You saw. And that's enough. You're standing at the edge of the lupanar, but the street behind you is fading now. The cobblestones blur. The murals soften. The whispers recede like a tide pulling slowly away from shore. Let it go. The stories you've witnessed tonight, etched in stone, hidden in dust, folded between oil lamps and cold mosaics, have earned their rest. And so have you. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your breathing slow. You're no longer walking cobbled alleys in a ruined city. You're in your own space now, wrapped in soft silence. A room without curtains. A bed without coins. A night where no one waits for your return. Feel your muscles settle. Feel the distance between then and now. Remember the quiet power of that final room, the hush of the Matrona's stylus, the weight of names scratched into forgotten plaster. Remember the ribbon tied around Ailea's wrist, the sandals hidden with lavender, the scent of figs. Let them drift. Let the memory fade, not lost, just softened. Because some places, some lives don't need to shout to be remembered. They linger, like incense, like fingerprints, like a name carved into warm stone long after the hand that etched it is gone. So now let your eyes close. Let the last candle flicker out behind your lids. And sleep. Not like someone who needs escape, but like someone who's finally seen something worth carrying into dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping through a stone doorway in the heart of ancient Pompeii. You hear the creak of worn hinges, the soft shuffle of sandals on mosaic, and the distant hum of voices echoing down the alley behind you. You duck beneath a low arch past crumbling frescoes and enter a space lost to time but preserved in volcanic ash, the Lupanar Pompeii's most famous brothel. The air inside is cooler than you expect. The walls, still intact in places, hold painted scenes that feel bold even by modern standards. You catch a glimpse of a reclining woman with golden bracelets, eyes half-lidded, and a customer in a pose that would make your history teacher blush. Above you, a narrow skylight lets moonlight pour across stone bed frames carved into tiny rooms, barely wide enough for a mattress, if there ever were any. You're here. In the place where deals were struck, pleasures were bartered, and secrets were whispered into worn linen. You probably won't survive this historically without raising an eyebrow or two. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and the time you're watching this. Midnight in Minnesota, dawn in Da Nang. Let me know. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step further into the Lupanar. It's smaller than you expected, tighter, the ceiling low, the corridors narrow. You brush your hand against the warm wall fingers, tracing indentations left by long-vanished people who leaned here, waited here, worked here. One step forward. To your right, a stone staircase curves up toward a small barred window. Upstairs, private rooms. The better rooms, if such a distinction existed. Down here, there are 10 chambers, 10 cells, each with its own built-in bed of volcanic stone. No doors, just doorways. Most still have faded frescoes above the bed frame art as suggestion, or maybe as advertisement. You step into one of the rooms. It's barely 2 meters deep, just wide enough to lie down if you lie still. You crouch and run your hand along the slab, smooth, cold, surprisingly level. You wonder what it would have felt like to spend 10 minutes here, or 10 hours. Some came for pleasure, some came because they were told to. There's no mattress now, but maybe there never was. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Pompeii's Lupanar is the most well-preserved brothel in the ancient world. The word Lupanar comes from lupa, meaning she-wolf, Roman slang for prostitute. This building had 10 rooms, erotic frescoes, and even a latrine in the corner. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't shameful. It was just business. You return to the hallway, brushing past a column that once held an oil lamp. The grooves are still there. You can almost see it flickering, casting amber light on the painted walls as the hours dragged on. A voice drifts into your imagination, soft, tired, professional. Next, you turn left, this time toward the front room. It's larger, possibly used for waiting or selecting, maybe for negotiating prices. The walls here have more graffiti than fresco. Names, boasts, compliments, complaints, and jokes. One scratched line reads, "Felix futuit bene." Felix did it well. Was Felix a performer, a client, a liar? Who knows? Here's your quirky tidbit. Ancient Roman graffiti was often explicit, personal, and weirdly proud. One nearby scribble reads, "I paid 2 asses and left smiling." Another, "Thrasymachus cheated me." Don't ask for him. It wasn't just venting, it was yelp with a chisel. You reach out and trace one name still visible, Lucia. Another, Fortunata. Maybe workers, maybe visitors, maybe ghosts. There's debate, of course there is, over who exactly worked here. Historians still argue whether the women in the lupanar were slaves, freed women, or somewhere in between. Some may have chosen the work. Others had no choice at all. The truth likely varies just as it does today. You pause by the latrine near the back. A squat rectangle carved into the stone with a drain leading outward. Efficient, practical, absolutely necessary. You crouch beside it and imagine the sounds of the night. Not the ones everyone imagines, but the real ones. Feet shuffling, water splashing, laughter, shouts, the creak of tired limbs standing up again. Somewhere outside, a dog barking. Back in the central hall, a breeze rustles through the barred window above. The light is shifting. The moon is high now. You can almost hear sandals tapping against tile as someone else enters, nervous, new, holding a coin pouch just tight enough to turn their knuckles white. They're about to choose, and you're about to learn how. But for now, you take one last slow walk through the lupanar, passing each tiny room, each painted figure frozen mid-pose. You imagine the workers here not as symbols or art or scandal, but as people. Some smiling, some tired, some calculating the hours until dawn. You stop at the threshold again. Behind you, the past. Ahead of you, 10 more stories waiting to be heard. And somewhere beneath your feet, the soft echo of sandals sliding across stone, disappearing forever in a sudden choking cloud of ash. But not yet. For now, the brothel breathes. You're still standing in the corridor of the lupanar when you hear her footsteps. Not soft, not tentative, measured, confident. She passes you like smoke and silk hair tied up with bone pins, linen robes tucked high for movement, not for show. She doesn't glance at you because she doesn't need to. She's not here to be admired. She's here to run the place. Meet the matrona, the woman in charge. You follow her without meaning to, drawn by the rhythm of her stride and the faint jangle of bronze keys against her hip. She checks each room, just a glance, just enough to ensure no one's lying unconscious or hiding coins under the mattress-less slab. She's not a servant, not a madam in the way the modern world imagines it. She's part manager, part priestess, part iron-willed den mother with a mental ledger thicker than any scroll in the forum. This is her house, and you're lucky she hasn't asked you to sweep. Here's your historical fact for the night. Pompeian brothels were often overseen by Elena, a female manager who handled scheduling, client flow pricing, and sometimes even training. The matrona could be a former worker, a freedwoman, or a trusted appointee of the owner. She wasn't necessarily kind, but she kept the chaos from spilling past the threshold. Tonight, she moves with purpose. She pauses at a low shelf near the front, checks the oil lamp. Empty. She clicks her tongue. A nearby boy, maybe 10, dashes off to refill it. Likely a slave. Or her nephew. Or both. "Where's Falima?" she mutters. You don't know who Falima is, but from the tone she's either late in trouble or about to be both. The Matrona sets down a bundle of cloth-washed linens for room 3. She doesn't knock. She just tosses them in. You get the impression she knocks for no one. Here's your quirky detail: one graffito in the lupanar refers to Dione, best Matrona of the lot. Whether it was praise or sarcasm is unclear, but it suggests that clients knew who was managing the place and formed opinions. The Matrona reaches into a wall niche and lights incense, not for the clients, for herself. She mutters a prayer to Venus under her breath, and the smoke coils upward, curling along the ceiling like a ghost in no hurry. Now comes the inspection. She stops at the graffiti again, frowns, reaches out with her thumb, and smudges a particularly vulgar sketch into obscurity. "Not clever," she murmurs, "and not spelled right." She continues, pausing at the entrance. The street beyond is empty for now, but she can sense when business is coming. She always can. She turns and calls out names, 6 in total. You hear rustling, doors opening, bare feet on tile. They gather like a lineup. Some stretch, some adjust their sashes. One scratches her scalp and mutters, "My turn already." The Matrona does not answer with words. She just looks, and the woman straightens up immediately. Here's where the scholarly debate comes in. Did Matronae protect or exploit the women under their care? Some suggest they were maternal figures helping the younger workers survive. Others argue they were businesswomen, first bound more to coin than to compassion. The truth, as always, shifts between context and character. Tonight, this one seems somewhere in between. She corrects a loose hairpin, adjusts someone's sash, whispers something into a younger girl's ear, something you don't hear but clearly matters. Then she claps her hands once sharply. Dispersal. The lineup vanishes back into their rooms. Business has begun. The Matrona crosses to the ledger. Not a scroll, just a wooden tablet smeared with wax. She uses a stylus and scratches a few quick lines. Tallies, probably, or names, or debts. You lean over her shoulder, unseen. The list includes Lucilla 3 repeats. Vibia wine 2 cups added. Lentulus rough flagged. Manius O's. 1 denarius refused kiss. That last one makes you smile. Refused the kiss, huh? Maybe he's saving it for someone else. Or maybe he thinks he's still virtuous. Either way, she's noted it. And here's your fringe fact: Matrona often kept blacklists, no-return clients who fought insulted or underpaid. Sometimes the punishment was a price hike. Sometimes it was public humiliation. One brothel reportedly posted a chalkboard of offenders right at the door. The Matrona finally sits down. Not because she's tired, but because everything is in motion now, and she's earned her minute. Her seat is angled toward the entrance. She sees every shadow cross the threshold. She can smell irregular from across the room. She knows which worker prefers men who speak Greek, which ones hate bearded clients, which ones will flirt extra if given honey. You get the sense that she could run the entire city from this stool if someone handed her the keys. She probably wouldn't want to. Too many useless senators. You watch her lean back, sip from a copper cup, and flick something invisible off her robe. She's not young, but she's not fading either. She's just here, present, tethered to the rhythm of the house like an anchor in volcanic soil, and you leave her where she belongs, watching. counting. Waiting for Falima, who still hasn't shown up, and likely never will. You slip quietly back down the narrow hallway, past the Matrona's sharp eyes, and into the rhythm of the lupanar itself. Lamps have been lit now, casting buttery shadows against the cracked frescoes. There's laughter coming from room 6, a cough from room 4. You pause, then keep moving. Tonight you shadow someone else, a worker. She's called Livia, or at least that's the name scratched on the wall beside her door, next to a crude heart, and the phrase Livia dulce amat omnes. Sweet Livia loves everyone. She probably didn't write that herself, or maybe she did. Who's to say? You follow her through her routine, a day in the life of a Pompeian sex worker, from bathhouse to bedroll, from coin counting to shoulder rubbing. She's not tired yet. She's still in that liminal space between getting ready and getting real. Her hair's been oiled, coiled, and clasped. Her eyes are rimmed in charcoal. Her wrists jingle softly as she moves. You might expect her to look nervous. She doesn't. She looks calculated. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Sex work in Pompeii wasn't hidden in alleyways. It was part of the city's economy. With over 30 sites suspected to be brothels or erotic stops, Pompeii treated pleasure as a commodity, regulated, taxed, advertised. It was work. And for many women like Livia, it was survival. She stops at the wash basin first. The water's been changed recently, lukewarm, faintly scented with rose and vinegar. She rinses her hands, arms, and neck. Not thoroughly, just enough. Time is money, and there's already a footstep echoing outside her door. She leans down, lifts the corner of a woven mat, and checks the jar underneath. 10 coins. She adds 3 more from her sash and closes it again. That's her cut. And it's not bad. You sit in the corner of her cell, unseen, as her first client steps in. An older man, merchant maybe, rings on his fingers, robe embroidered with wine-stained vines. He looks at her like he already knows her. Maybe he does. Maybe this is the 3rd visit this week. Maybe it's the 1st. There's no greeting. Just a glance at the fresco above the bed. It shows a reclining couple in a position that seems suspiciously gymnastic. The man points. She shrugs. "Extra," she says flatly. He nods, tosses another coin on the slab. The door doesn't close behind him. There is no door, just a curtain. And that here counts as privacy. Here's your quirky tidbit: some brothel workers in Pompeii were multilingual, not for culture, but commerce. One graffito in the lupanar advertises, "Fortunata speaks Greek and Latin, ask for her if you don't speak Roman." Another offers quick company, good Latin, gentle hands. Livia works quickly, not coldly, just efficiently. No love, no seduction. Just a job. You turn your head. Not out of modesty, out of respect. Even a ghost has boundaries. When the man leaves, he gives her a single nod. No thank you. No goodbye. Just a nod. She doesn't watch him go. Instead, she reaches for a scrap of cloth, wipes the stone, and breathes in through her nose, out through her mouth. 1 down, 2 more booked, 1 unconfirmed. She leans her head against the wall and closes her eyes for 6 seconds. Not sleep, just pause. Then she sits up, adjusts the drape of her robe, and waits. Here's where historians debate: were women like Livia slaves, freed women, hired contractors? The answer is inconveniently yes, all of the above. Some were owned by the brothel itself. Others worked for a cut. A few, the lucky few, earned enough to buy their freedom or someone else's. Livia steps out for a moment into the back courtyard. There she stretches arms up, spine-cracking toes curled into the warm tile. She picks a fig from a basket near the fountain, eats it in 2 bites, rubs the juice from her chin, and doesn't smile. No one's watching her out here, except you, and she wouldn't care about you anyway. She used to care about being watched, about the stares, the comments, the hands that didn't wait for permission. Not anymore. She's learned how to be something else. Not invisible. Untouchable. A dog barks in the distance. She returns to her cell, resumes her position. Not out of resignation, but routine. And here's your fringe detail. One freedwoman in Pompeii left behind an epitaph that reads, "She worked with hands, with heart, and with skill. She kept her own name. No husband, no master. Just a woman paid in silver and remembered in stone." Livia's next visitor arrives. Younger, nervous. She softens her voice, offers him wine, sits a little closer. Not because she likes him, because it helps. And she knows what helps. You leave her there on her slab in her cell, in her city of smoke and ash and flickering lamps. There's no shame in her story. Just another evening on the job. You stay close to the wall now, fingers brushing the stone as you walk. The surface is rough in some places, polished smooth. In others places where countless hands have lingered. Not all of them kind. Some curious, some drunk, some just bored. And then you see it. A name scratched into plaster by someone who had more confidence than spelling skill. Successus est hic futuans bene. Successus was here doing it well. Graffiti. The lupanar is full of it. You crouch down, tilting your head to read a smaller message nearby, almost poetic. Ampliatus loved Novellia and paid 3 denarii. Romance transaction. Sarcasm. Welcome to the graffiti walls of Pompeii, where clients became critics, and every scratched word is a whisper from 2,000 years ago. Here's your historical fact. Over 150 pieces of erotic or client-related graffiti have been discovered in Pompeii's lupanar alone. They offer a rare, unfiltered glimpse into ancient Roman sexuality, not through a philosopher's scroll, but through the casual, often vulgar scrawls of average people. You pass another wall and pause. The words here are messier, more frantic. You sound them out quietly. Gaius was here. He gave nothing. Ouch. Next to it, someone else has drawn a stick figure, couple complete with labels. You chuckle. If there's one thing more immortal than marble or myth, it's bathroom humor. Further down, the graffiti gets less playful. One line reads, "Don't ask for Marcia, she steals." Another, "Beware the Greek with the ring." He bites. You get the sense that the lupanar wasn't just a place for pleasure. It was a bulletin board, a diary, a confessional, and sometimes a revenge post. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe the graffiti was written with styluses and charcoal, while others think people used broken pottery as makeshift pens. No matter the tool, the messages stuck literally and figuratively. You tilt your head again and spot a more elegant script carved deeper than the rest. Victoria writes poems between clients. Ask her for a verse. You smile. You hope someone did. You imagine Victoria scribbling in the candlelight, hiding her verses behind jokes and prices. Maybe she meant them. Maybe they were part of the show. Further along, one graffito makes you pause longer than the rest. I paid her, but I felt nothing. It's the only one like it. No bravado, no punchline, just that. You stand in silence for a moment. And here's where historians disagree. Was graffiti in brothels considered accepted expression or vandalism? Some argue it was tolerated, even encouraged as part of the atmosphere. Others say workers were fined for improper scribbles. But the sheer volume suggests either nobody cared or everybody participated. You pass a corner where the plaster is cracked, revealing layers underneath. Even the walls have layers. Old scribbles beneath newer ones, names crossed out then rewritten. Someone tried to erase a curse word, but only smudged it into eternity. One wall is almost entirely covered in prices. They aren't labeled as such, but you recognize the rhythm. Julia 2 asses with kiss. Clemens. 1 denarius without. Flora 3 for the hour. Sweet voice. No services listed, just names and numbers. You wonder if they were carved by clients or workers, if they were accurate, if they were threats or bragging rights, or warnings. You look up. The lamp above flickers, casting shadows that dance across the frescoes. Even the pictures seem to blush under the weight of so much commentary. And here's your fringe detail: in at least one room, the graffiti actually forms a back-and-forth conversation between two anonymous writers, complete with insults, jokes, and escalating dares. A primitive message board. One even ends with, "You will know me by the blue cloak. Say it to my face." The thread is over 900 years old. Still petty, still perfect. You lean against the wall now, staring at one last message: I came. I paid. I left happier than I arrived. It's hard to know if it was true, if it was honest, if it was even real. But it stayed. Outlived empires. Outlived names, outlived ash. And now it's speaking softly to you like a midnight secret whispered in a hallway of echoes. You turn the corner and feel the hallway open just slightly enough for a breath, maybe two. The air here is warmer, and you catch the scent of something unfamiliar, oil mixed with crushed bay leaf. The source isn't obvious. Nothing in Pompeii ever is. This is the choosing zone. You pause beneath a wall painting one of the clearer frescoes in the brothel, though the edges are cracked, flaked, ghosted with time. A couple mid-act balanced on a tilted slab. The man wears a laurel. The woman is looking straight at you. You blink. Did people really choose partners based on wall art? It turns out, yes. Tonight you're shadowing a client, watching someone choose a companion Pompeii style through images, gestures, and a lot of awkward glances. He arrives now, a young man. Tunic-pressed sandals, clean coin pouch, modest but full. He steps inside, looks around like he's somewhere between a bakery and a confession booth. You stay close behind, invisible as he moves along the corridor. He stops at the fresco again, the same one you studied. He stares longer than most. You wonder if he's nervous, or if he's trying to work up the nerve to ask for something specific. Here's your historical fact. The frescoes in Pompeii's brothels were not random. They likely represented popular services or preferences available at that location. They weren't necessarily menus, but they were coded advertisements. A client didn't need to speak Latin to get the message. Pictures did the talking. Our visitor, let's call him Silas, lingers at room 4. The woman sitting inside is older than he expected. He moves on. Room 6, fresco of a couple kneeling. He stops, peers in. The girl looks up, raises one eyebrow, then tilts her head slightly. That's the code. It means I'm available, but not for long. Silas steps inside, ducking a little. They speak softly. You catch only pieces. She says 3 asses. He says with wine, she snorts. Not good wine. He nods. She waves a hand toward the slab. He drops the coins onto a chipped saucer and disappears behind the curtain. Transaction complete. Here's your quirky tidbit. Pricing in brothels varied widely from a loaf of bread to a small gold coin depending on the service, the client, and the time of day. Some women charged more during festivals. Some offered discounts for quiet men. One graffito reads, "Half price if you tell a joke first." You move on studying the frescoes more closely. Some are simple, others ambitious. There's debate over what they actually depict. Were they real positions? Fantasies, instructions? One shows a woman balancing on a man's lap while holding a flute. A scholar once argued it symbolized joyful multitasking. Another said, no, she just liked music. Historians still argue whether these images were reflective of real encounters or served to titillate and attract diverse clientele. Some believe they were aspirational, offering an illusion of variety. Others suggest they were accurate previews of what was literally on the menu. You linger near room 7. The fresco here is faded, but still legible. A woman reclining with a scroll in hand. That's rare, almost romantic. The man sits beside her, not touching her at all. You wonder if anyone ever asked for that, just to sit, to talk, to pretend. It wasn't all fire and frenzy. Some clients probably came just to not be lonely, and some workers knew exactly how to sell that feeling. Outside, footsteps echo again. Another client enters, older, broader, wearing a merchant's sash. He doesn't pause at the pictures. He knows where he's going. Room 2. You glance up. The fresco here is gone, scraped clean. Maybe by time. Maybe by someone who didn't want to be remembered. The curtain is already half open. The woman inside doesn't speak. She just waves him in her face, unreadable. Transaction again. Routine. The third visitor tonight walks in with his eyes already half closed. He's drunk. He mutters something you don't catch. Slurs a name, Cassia, but no one answers. He turns, shrugs, and walks back out. Not rejected, just lost. You imagine modern dating apps and realize they're not that different. Swipe left. Move on. Try again tomorrow. You stop beneath one final fresco, bold, strange, almost theatrical. A woman riding a chariot pulled by goats, holding what appears to be a whip made of flowers. There's no room associated with this image, just the painting. A myth, an inside joke, a favorite memory. No one knows, but it stayed on the wall, and here's your fringe detail. In rare cases, some frescoes depicted mythological scenes, Venus, Pan, satyrs, suggesting that pleasure was tied to religion, ritual, or even superstition. Some clients may have chosen based on symbols, not just physical preferences. A painting of Venus could mean fertility, or favor, or just style. You step back into the center of the corridor. The brothel is humming now, not loud, but steady. Like a machine of sighs, sandals, whispers, coin breath. Some choose quickly. Some linger at the frescoes. Some never decide at all. And you've seen how choices were made by art, by glance, by rhythm. Not so different from now. Only with more goats. You linger near the far end of the hallway now, where the frescoes are more vivid, protected maybe by just the right angle of light and shadow over the centuries. The paint, though faded, still clings stubbornly to the plaster and the figures. Well, they aren't shy. In this section of the lupanar, the murals speak louder than the people. They're bold, graphic, anatomically generous, and each one is framed neatly above a bed slab like a Roman menu for those too shy or too drunk to ask. Tonight, you focus on the infamous erotic murals and the mysterious position number 7. You approach one panel slowly. two figures mid-embrace. She's sitting astride, head thrown back, gold bangles slipping down her wrists. He's reclining, hands gripping the edges of the slab like he's either ecstatic or terrified. Above them, a painted number 7. There it is. Position 7. It's featured on more than one wall here. A local favorite, a Roman meme, a misunderstood medical danger. Nobody agrees. In fact, here's your scholarly debate of the night. Historians still argue whether these images were literal representations of Service's abstract erotic art or coded marketing tools. Some say the numbers like 7 implied specific acts for purchase. Others think they were just for decoration or humor. And one theory claims they were added after the brothel closed to spice up the tourist trail. You step closer to another fresco. This one is wilder. Less sensual, more acrobatic. 2 men, 1 woman, and a large amphora that no one seems to be drinking from. You tilt your head. Either it's symbolic or someone's about to get very bruised. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The erotic murals of Pompeii are some of the best preserved in the world, offering a rare peek into Roman attitudes toward pleasure, performance, and even power. Many are located in brothels, bathhouses, or private homes, and they weren't always hidden. Pleasure wasn't secret. It was stylized. You find position number 7 again, this time in a slightly different pose. The woman's hands are clasped behind her back. The man's wearing a crown, maybe a tribute to a favorite client, or maybe wishful thinking. There's a theory that certain repeat customers were allowed to commission frescoes immortalizing their favorite moments on the walls. A fringe idea, but it would explain why one room seems to feature the same man in several scenes. You step into that room now. It smells faintly of dust and lemon balm, likely from the incense the Matrona burns nearby. The fresco here is particularly striking. The woman wears nothing but ankle ribbons. The man, a blue-striped tunic and 1 sandal. You look closer. The same blue-striped tunic appears in another panel across the hall. And again, in a third room. Coincidence or ego? Here's your quirky tidbit. Some of the erotic frescoes include subtle jokes like a figure holding a tiny scroll mid-act, or a dog peeking in through the curtains. One even shows a pair tangled in silk, while a servant looks on holding a tray of bread. Because apparently carbs were part of the fantasy. You imagine the artists, probably hired by the building's owner, paid per panel, maybe per detail. Add a scroll, make it classy, put a dog in. Why not paint me like one of your Sabine girls? You can almost hear the brush strokes, the laughter, the muttered curses when plaster dried too fast. Back in the hallway, 2 clients are pointing at the murals, now debating. One nudges the other toward position number 7. He shrugs. Looks like hard work. The Matrona calls out from her stool, "Only if you try." They laugh, walk on. The fresco stays where it is, unbothered, unashamed, frozen in motion. You glance upward. The ceiling here is bare, rough with soot. No decoration. The attention was all down below, on walls, on slabs, on fleeting performances, immortalized in paint. And here's your fringe detail. A few erotic frescoes found in Pompeii were deliberately removed or hidden during early excavations, too risque for 19th century eyes. Some were locked away in the secret cabinet of the Naples Museum, viewable only by scholars or men with bribes. It wasn't until the late 20th century that many were restored and reinterpreted, not as scandal, but as story. You walk slowly now. Every image you pass feels like a whisper from the past. Not just of acts, but of intentions. Desire, certainly. But also pride, humor, boldness. Someone painted these with purpose. Someone chose to lie beneath them night after night as strangers pointed, stared, and decided. You pause one last time beneath position number 7. The woman is still astride, the man still stunned, and you still wondering if he ever actually paid. You drift past the last of the murals, the flicker of lamplight dimming behind you. The laughter and murmurs grow quieter now, not because the night has ended, but because the rhythm of the place has settled into routine. The brothel is breathing like a beast at rest, still very much alive, just pacing slower. You find yourself at the back of the building now, where things feel different, less polished, less performative. This is where the math happens, where bodies turn into numbers and numbers into survival. You're about to learn how sex work functioned as labor in ancient Pompeii. A wooden counter sits crooked near the rear courtyard. A few ledgers, a wax tablet, and a worn-out cushion mark the spot where business was tallied. It's not glamorous, but it's essential. This isn't the front desk. This is the bank. Here's your historical fact. Sex workers in Pompeii were taxed by the Roman state. That's right. Their earnings were tracked, documented, and skimmed, just like a baker's or a butcher's. The tax was called vectigul ex capturis, and it treated intimacy as a taxable transaction, not a shameful act. So yes, Rome profited from the very thing it publicly mocked. You run your hand along the counter. You can almost hear the rustle of coin purses, the flick of the stylus on wax, the low arguments over fractions of a denarius. You hear it now, a client complaining to the matrona. That wasn't worth 4 asses. She doesn't blink. The next time bring 6. And manners. He leaves. She stays. Adds a mark to the tablet. She doesn't need to defend her workers. The math does it for her. You step outside for a moment into the tiny side yard where laundry is draped over a cracked clay line. A young woman, you think her name is Vibia, is scrubbing a cloth against the edge of a basin. Her back is bent. Her hands are raw. This isn't the glamorous side of the trade. She glances up, blows a strand of hair from her face, and returns to scrubbing. Because no matter what happened on the slab, someone still has to clean the linens. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some brothels employed dedicated laundresses not for fashion, but for sanitation. Linens, towels, and tunics were rinsed in vinegar or wine dregs to kill odors and parasites. It was a full-time job, and a terrible one. You peer through a small opening in the back wall. Beyond it, the kitchen. A squat hearth. 2 broken amphorae. A line of cups, none of them matching. Someone's making a thin stew, mostly lentils, with a suspicious-looking fish head floating on top. It smells edible, mostly. A young boy, likely a slave, stirs the pot, wiping his nose with the same hand holding the spoon. You make a note not to eat here, but clients did, and workers had to. This wasn't just a pleasure house. It was a workplace. And like any workplace, it came with its own caste system. Here's where scholars still debate. Was sex work in Pompeii a recognized profession or a tolerated necessity? In some documents, it's listed alongside other trades. In others, it's excluded, unworthy of guilds or status. The law said one thing, the culture another. You return inside just as a coin dispute erupts near room 8. A client, slim, sullen, clearly drunk, is insisting he already paid. The matrona's not having it. You paid for 1 turn, Marcus. You had 2. He gestures wildly. I was confused. She leans in. Then perhaps you need simpler pleasures. You can almost hear the room smirk. Marcus throws another coin down and leaves muttering curses that sound more like sneezes. Vibia appears moments later. Eyes tired, hands empty. She doesn't speak, just holds out her palm. The matrona drops a single coin in it. Vibia stares. No wine, she asks softly. The Matrona shrugs. He didn't pay for it. Vibia nods. Not angry, just resigned. She disappears down the hallway. You trail her quietly and spot her slipping her coin into a cracked clay jar beneath her bed. 4 coins in total. Probably enough for bread tomorrow. Maybe a fig, and maybe just maybe a comb if she haggles with the vendor. This is how the economy moves here. 1 body, 1 service, 1 coin at a time. And here's your fringe detail. Some women in Pompeii's brothels paid rent to the owner, keeping their earnings minus a nightly fee for the space. Like Airbnb, with worse plumbing. Others were paid wages, fixed, controlled, taxed. A few worked on commission, the ancient equivalent of sales incentives. Back at the ledger desk, the Matrona lights a fresh oil lamp. She marks down the day's earnings so far. 16 clients, 3 unpaid, 2 complaints, 1 incident of sandals stolen. She shakes her head. Some nights are like that. You exhale slowly. There's nothing glamorous about what you've just seen. But there is structure. There is control. There is, in its own way, a system. A tired, unfair, endlessly repeated system. And everyone in this building has learned how to survive inside it. Especially the ones who never had a choice. You turn away from the books and ledgers. Numbers have their place, but they don't tell the full story. You're drawn now toward the subtle clutter scattered around the brothel's quieter corners. Small things, forgotten things, objects that tell the truth more softly. You're about to explore the tools of the trade oil's trinkets and tricks, all the little details that turned a dim room and a slab of stone into something that for at least a few minutes could pass for magic. First, you notice the bottles. Some are amphorae sealed with wax. Others are tiny clay flasks, thick-necked and stained from use. Inside oils, salves, sometimes perfume, sometimes more, experimental mixtures. You pick one up. The scent hits fast, sharp, floral, with a faint undertone of something sour. A love potion, a foot salve, ancient shampoo. Who knows? In Pompeii, everything had a double meaning. Here's your historical fact. Romans used scented oils not just for pleasure, but to mark identity. The scent you wore could be a signature. Jasmine for youth, myrrh for wealth, rue for protection. And in a brothel, the right fragrance wasn't luxury, it was advertising. You open a wooden box near the back wall. Inside, hairpins, beads, small glass trinkets. A polished mirror with a crack across the middle. A silver bullet charm, an amulet meant to ward off evil. And something stranger, a tiny bronze figurine of Priapus. You blink. He's anatomically enthusiastic. You set him down quickly. That wasn't for display. That was for power. Here's your quirky tidbit. Figurines of Priapus, the god of fertility and virility, were placed near beds to invite passion or scare off bad luck. Some were worn as charms. Others were hidden under mattresses. A few had inscriptions like, "If you're not ready, don't bother." You step into one of the storage rooms near the latrine. On a crooked shelf, a half-empty wine jug sits next to a plate of dried figs. Not leftovers supplies. Some clients paid extra for food. Some needed coaxing. Others just refused to get down to business on an empty stomach. There's a wine cup here with a crack down one side. It's been repaired with bronze staples, yes, staples. The Romans didn't throw things away. They fixed them. Even the drinking vessels had more lives than some of the workers. Next to the jug is a bundle of folded cloth, coarse linen, likely used as padding for the stone beds or less romantically as cleaning rags. You find a small jar wrapped in goat hide string. Inside, something thick and sticky. You sniff. immediately regret it. Possibly olive oil, possibly medicine, possibly glue. Maybe all three. And here's where the scholarly arguments begin. Historians still debate whether substances like oil and perfume were supplied by the brothel, by the clients, or by the workers themselves. Some records suggest deductions were made from a worker's pay for items like oil or wine, suggesting a kind of ancient workplace upcharge. Imagine being charged for the wine you had to pour. Classic management. You crouch beside a broken basket near the Matrona's corner. Inside old sandals, worn, cracked, a few mismatched earrings, and a small square of papyrus with two names written in delicate ink, Fortuna and Callistus. Maybe clients, maybe lovers, maybe the same person twice. Next to it, a tiny glass vial with a wax seal still intact. You don't open it. Whatever's inside has waited this long. Let it keep its secrets. Back in the hallway, you spot something else, a string of small red beads tied around a nail near room 2. Not fancy, not valuable, but deliberately placed. A gift, a charm, a signal. In some Roman customs, red thread was tied around wrists or bedposts to ward off envy or misfortune. In a brothel, that kind of protection would be practical, especially on nights when tempers ran hotter than usual. Here's your fringe detail. One brothel excavation revealed a hidden compartment beneath a bed containing a love spell, etched onto lead, wrapped around a bone and nailed shut. It read, roughly translated, "Let his desire turn only to me, and his coin never go to another." Magic wasn't just for temples, it was for competition. Because love here was a business strategy. You step into a quiet alcove where workers kept their personal items wrapped in cloth, stored in baskets, protected like tiny kingdoms. A comb missing 3 teeth, a pair of dice, a stylus with a broken nib, a pebble painted blue. You stare at the pebble longest. No meaning, no name, just something someone decided to keep. You look around the room again and realize that beneath all the frescoes and graffiti and flickering oil lamps, it's these small human details that make the place feel real. The cracked cup, the perfumed oil, the bronze figurine that's seen too much. You step back into the main hallway, and for a moment everything feels sharper, like you're not walking through a ruin, but someone else's day. Their job, their box of half-empty perfumes and bead-stringed hopes. And somewhere, maybe in one of those drawers, is a smile pressed between cloth, saved for the one client who said something kind. Just once. You don't notice the shift in energy at first. It's subtle. A longer laugh. A door curtain that doesn't quite close. A voice lowered not in caution, but in something gentler, something closer. You're beginning to understand this isn't just a business. There are relationships here. Rivalries, favorites, regulars. Tonight you're listening in on the tangled web of love, jealousy, and the returning clientele that turned quick encounters into strange, complicated routines. You start near room 5, where a woman named Laura is rearranging the folds of her tunic with a precision that suggests performance. She catches your gaze, well she would if you were visible, and says to no one in particular, "He's late again." Probably at Flora's. She says Flora like she's naming a disease. Her neighbor, reclining on a cushion, replies. Without looking up, Flora says the same about you. They both laugh, but not kindly. You've just stepped into a passive-aggressive soap opera with stone walls and shared clientele. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In Pompeii's brothels, some clients came so often they were considered regulars, sometimes developing close relationships, real or imagined, with specific workers. This wasn't rare. Graffiti even names frequent visitors alongside preferred companions. Felix loved Thalia thrice in 1 week. But love, that's another matter. You overhear Laura muttering under her breath. If he brings her honeyed wine again, I'll send him home limping. She says it with a smile. You hope it's a joke? Maybe. A knock echoes from down the hall. Flora answers it. It's him. You can tell from Laura's jaw tightening her hand, stilling mid-bracelet twist. You don't need to hear the conversation. You feel it. The regular has returned, but not for her. And jealousy, well, jealousy blooms fast in close quarters. Later that night, Laura carves a message into the wall behind her curtain. Some lovers don't pay. Some pay too much. You wonder which one he was. Here's your quirky tidbit. At least one graffito in the Lupanar refers to a man by name Octus, accusing him of sleeping with everyone and paying for no one. The equivalent of a public call-out post written in stone. You can imagine the smirks it caused. But not all relationships here were sharp-edged. In room 2, you notice something different. A bowl of fresh olives. A strip of silk hanging from the bed frame, blue soft, clearly not standard issue. And sitting at the edge of the slab, a woman named Terentia is smiling. Not faking it, smiling. Across from her, a client, not drunk, not loud, hands her a tiny scroll. A poem, a contract. You lean closer. Nope. A sketch. Crude but charming. A face. Her face. Underneath. For Terentia, the only star in Pompeii. She laughs, softly, still drawing me with goat hair eyebrows. He shrugs. They're accurate. You leave them there mid-joke, mid-smile. Not quite love, but something more than coin. Here's where scholars argue were emotional bonds in brothels real or strategic. Did workers maintain affection as a tactic, or were they like everyone occasionally surprised by tenderness, maybe both? A graffito on a nearby wall seems to answer, I gave her a ring. She gave me laughter. Worth it. You hear another voice louder this time. An argument near the courtyard. You said it was just business, it was. Until you started showing up every night. You back away slowly. There's something too modern about it. Too familiar. Later you find that same man sitting near the fountain. Alone. His face buried in his hands. The wine on his breath is older than his tears. A worker passes by, pauses, then keeps walking. No comfort. No illusion. Not tonight. And here's your fringe detail. One letter recovered from Herculaneum, Pompeii's sister city, mentions a man ruined by love and coin, swearing off brothels forever. Whether he meant it is lost to history, but the sentiment eternal. Back in the hallway, Laura is back at her spot, braiding her hair slowly. She hums a tune, something off-key and bitter. She scratches a second message into the wall beneath her first. He said, only you. He meant only tonight. Then she brushes off the dust and goes back to waiting. Just another night. Just another face, just another story painted in ash and salt, and things that almost felt like love. You return to the main corridor where the air seems to hum, not just with activity, but with social tension so subtle, it's worn smooth by repetition. The workers glide past you like ghosts with routines, some nodding to familiar clients, others brushing past new ones without even a glance. You're paying attention now, not just to the women, but to who walks in. And why? This is where you discover the true range of Pompeii's clientele, from slaves to senators. There's no single type, no standard. The brothel's stone doorway is a great equalizer, and tonight all classes have walked beneath it. You begin with the obvious, a young man in a clean tunic, gold ring on his finger, a little too much wine on his breath. He's wealthy, probably a merchant's son. He struts like he owns the building but winces when his sandal scrapes the entry stone. You watch him scan the rooms looking for someone he knows. He stops at room 1. A girl peeks out. She smiles. He hands her a coin, but not before slipping her a tiny scroll, folded creased. You don't know what it says. He walks in like he's coming home. Here's your historical fact. Roman brothels were frequented by people of all classes, slaves, freedmen, merchants, even nobles. And while the wealthy could afford discretion, many still came here drawn not by luxury, but by access. Status didn't matter much behind those curtains. Now a different figure enters. No gold, no swagger, bare feet. Rope belt. A slave. He carries a note, someone else's words scribbled onto a strip of bark. You follow him to the matrona. He hands her the note. She reads it, frowns. A favor, on credit. She sighs. He's lucky I like his cooking. She gestures to room 4. The slave bows and disappears into the shadows. Credit in Pompeii isn't just for wine and olives. Sometimes it bought moments of borrowed pleasure. You hear someone whisper, "He's here again." A man with a grizzled beard, short hair tunic so clean it practically glows. His sandals are too fine for the neighborhood. He carries a scroll case sealed in wax. He's a magistrate, or a scribe, or something worse. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He goes straight to room 7. The curtain closes. The oil lamp dims. You don't want to know what happens next. Not all power is loud. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some high-ranking Romans brought servants into the brothel, not just to wait, but to act as guards, or even witnesses, to ensure debts were honored. One graffito says Lucius watched while Decimus paid one with coin, the other with silence. Imagine having a chaperone in that scenario. Now someone new, a woman, mid-30s, green shawl, eyes sharp, heads turned, but not out of lust, out of confusion. She walks with purpose, not like she's lost or on the wrong street, like she belongs. She approaches the matrona. You can't hear the whole conversation, but you catch fragments. Just to talk. "I'll pay. I know how it works." The matrona nods slowly, measuring every syllable. "Room 3, she says at last. You follow the woman to the doorway. Inside, a younger girl sits nervously. There's no movement, no touch, just conversation. The woman laughs. The girl replies, 2 people. A room. No transaction except the one no one else sees. You step back. Here's where the historians start to argue again. Did women ever visit Pompeii's brothels as clients? Some say yes, rarely discreetly, often paying for conversation or comfort. Others claim such interactions were exaggerated or misinterpreted. But evidence exists. Graffiti, rumors, a pair of sandals too small for a man found in room 5. Not proof, but possibility. And in Pompeii, that's enough. Now the curtain at room 2 flutters. Out steps a man with hands stained from ink. A scribe. He adjusts his belt, glances down the corridor, and surprisingly hands the worker a coin and a small knife. "You said you needed one," he says. She nods, stashes it under the slab. Moments like that. They don't make it into the frescoes. They survive only as rumor, memory, vibe. And here's your fringe detail. Some Roman men had favorite girls in specific brothels like unofficial partners. They'd bring gifts, repeat their visits, even get jealous if someone else claimed their favorite. One client was said to have gifted his companion a live peacock. She allegedly let it sleep on the bed. You step back now into the entryway. A boy walks in barefoot, no coin, just wide eyes. The Matrona stops him with a look. He stammers, "Looking for my brother." She studies him, then points toward the alley. "He left an hour ago." The boy nods, ducks out. Maybe he was lying. Maybe he was telling the truth. Either way, not everyone who walked into a brothel came for pleasure. Some came for answers. Some came for warmth. Some came because they had nowhere else. You turn slowly. Watch the corridor breathe. 10 rooms. 10 stories playing out every hour. And the people who pass through, they're not just names in a textbook. They're the real Pompeii. Slaves, merchants, scribes, senators, each with a coin, each with a secret, each walking in like they're the only one who matters. Until they leave. And someone else walks in. You take a slow step back into the hallway. It's later now, some rooms are quiet, others not so much. The oil lamps flicker lower. Feet shuffle. Voices drop. Everything here was built to give an illusion of privacy, but you're beginning to understand the truth walls in Pompeii weren't thick enough to keep secrets in or out. This place isn't silent. It just pretends well. You hover near room 6. A client is inside, probably mid-30s, tunic bunched at his hips, voice like broken stone. He's trying to be romantic. She's trying not to laugh. It's not cruel, just real. Through the thin curtain, you hear him say, "No one's like you." You hear her reply, "You said that to Vibia yesterday." Oof. Here's your historical fact. The Lupanar's 10 rooms were divided by brick walls, many just a few inches thick. There were no doors, only hanging curtains. Privacy wasn't structural. It was an illusion built from politeness, denial, and selective listening. But let's be honest, everyone heard everything. Next door, a man sneezes. Someone 2 rooms down mutters, "Blessed be Mercury." You chuckle. Even gods can't help you if you're sharing a brothel wall. You press your hand to one of the stone partitions. It's smooth in places, polished by years of leaning, slapping, scraping, sighing. You hear whispers, laughter, a coin drop, a slap. Then silence. Then the creak of someone adjusting their weight on the slab. Then silence again. The curtain flutters. Someone's gone. Someone else waits. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some workers developed sound codes to communicate between rooms, tapping walls, humming patterns, shifting bracelets. It wasn't formal, but it worked. If one client got rough, a neighbor could pretend to bump a pot, triggering the Matrona's attention. Their walls may have been thin, but their awareness was sharp. You peek into room 9 after the curtain swings open. It's empty now, still warm. The scent of wine, sweat, and something floral lingers like a ghost that doesn't know where to go. The fresco above the bed is faded but clear enough, a man kneeling before a woman offering a laurel crown. She looks unimpressed. Same. In the corner of the room, tucked behind a cracked water jug, you find a broken comb, 2 small pebbles, and a scrap of papyrus. There's writing on it. Waited for you. Left when it hurt. Not a joke. Not graffiti. Just a message. Unsent. Unread. Unanswered. And here's where historians still debate, was privacy in brothels meant for comfort or control? Some argue that the openness created safety, no one was truly alone. Others believe it made intimacy impossible, reduced everything to performance. Most agree the curtains weren't fooling anyone. Back in the main corridor, the Matrona adjusts a curtain. She doesn't knock. She never knocks. She listens. A pause. A cough. Then a voice. It's fine. She moves on. You're beginning to realize she can read silence better than most people read scrolls. There's a rhythm to the rooms now. Someone laughs. Someone groans. Someone prays. All within 10 paces of each other. No secrets. No real solitude. Just space that feels almost separate. Almost safe. You step into the corner alcove again, where some of the workers sleep when they're not working. One girl is curled up on a pile of cloth facing the wall. Her back rises and falls. She's not asleep. Just quiet. You hear her whisper, "He called me Julia." The other girl says nothing. Maybe her name is Julia, maybe not. It doesn't matter here. Identity isn't fixed. It's flexible. Names shift depending on who's paying and what they want to believe. Another curtain swings. A man with red cheeks and rumpled clothes steps out head low. He murmurs, "Sorry," to no one, maybe to himself. You glance back at room 2. The worker is already adjusting her sash, straightening the cloth on the slab. One client gone, another soon to come. No time for reflection. Just movement. A cough echoes from the hallway. Someone clears their throat. Someone else knocks softly, as if unsure whether they're welcome. The curtain opens, closes, repeat. Here's your fringe detail. Some brothels reportedly installed noise jars in corners, ceramic pots meant to enhance acoustics or soften certain sounds. Whether for drama or comfort, no one knows for sure. But a few have been found in strange spots placed deliberately like stage props. You imagine one now, sitting beneath a bench, empty, but full of echoes. The sound of sandals brushing stone, coins clinking, voices behind thin walls saying, "Stay a little longer." You lean against one partition, feel the warmth from the other side. Someone whispers, "I don't want to go yet." You don't know if he's a regular or a stranger. You don't know if she wants him to stay, but you stay just a moment longer too. Listening. Not because you're curious, but because that's the only kind of privacy this place truly offers. The kind you make yourself. In silence. You've followed many men through these doors, watched them strut, stumble, whisper, weep. But now the air changes. Sandals on stone, a different cadence. Not heavy, not rushed, measured. You glance toward the entrance as a woman steps through the curtain. Not a worker, not someone here on accident. Her tunic is fine linen dyed a muted violet. Her jewelry is simple but unmistakably expensive. Her hair is pinned in a high twist that says, "I didn't come here to be mistaken for you." A Roman noblewoman, and yes, she just walked into a brothel. She's alone. The Matrona notices, of course. She sets down her wax tablet, doesn't speak, just observes. That kind of silence comes with rank. The noblewoman meets her eyes. "I've come to hire a girl," she says. No stammer, no shame, just a transaction. The Matrona raises one eyebrow. "For yourself." A nod. That's all. You've just witnessed a moment that scholars debate to this day. Did Roman women ever visit brothels as clients? Or is this simply imagination layered onto incomplete evidence? Here's your historical fact. There are scattered references across Roman sources to elite women taking lovers outside their marriages, including female patrons hiring companions discreetly. Whether it was common is unknown. Whether it happened here, you're about to find out. The Matrona stands and gestures toward the back hallway. Room 10. No discussion. No whispering behind hands. Just business. You follow. The noblewoman walks like she owns marble roads and silver doorways. But here her steps soften, as if she's shedding something with every footfall, status, expectation, eyes. She stops at the doorway of room 10. Inside is a young worker reclining lazily on a cushion. She sits up at once, startled. The noblewoman studies her. There's a moment, silent, wordless, where everything is uncertain. Then softly, "What's your name?" The worker hesitates. "Alia." "I'm Junia." They shake hands. Not lovers. Not yet. Not anything at all. Just two women in a place built for something else entirely. Junia steps inside. The curtain falls behind her. You wait. Time slows. No sounds. No forced laughter. No clinking coins. Just quiet. Later, when Junia steps back into the hallway, her eyes are different, less guarded. She presses something into Alia's hand, a folded ribbon. Then she disappears out the door into the smoke-dusted streets of Pompeii. No one stops her. No one dares. Here's your quirky tidbit. A fragment of graffiti near a brothel entrance reads, "She loved her like a song, and the whole house heard." It's faded, scratched over, maybe never meant for preservation. But it exists. A whisper of something outside the norm, inked into crumbling stone. Back inside, Alia turns the ribbon over in her hands. She smiles. Not a smirk. Not for show. A real smile. The kind you don't wear for coin. Later that night, two of the other workers are gossiping near the fountain. She came back the third time this month. Was she alone? She always is. You hear a laugh. Then a hush. Then one of them says, "I think she pays for honesty." And maybe that's true. Here's where the historians split. Some say stories like these are romantic myths stitched together from gossip and projection. Others believe noblewomen had more agency than the history books allow, and simply used it quietly behind silk curtains and borrowed names. Maybe both are true, or neither. But you were there, and you saw how Alia touched the ribbon, not like it was money, but like it was proof of something. A memory, maybe, or a promise. You pass her room later. She's asleep now, curled beneath a shawl that isn't hers, the ribbon tied around her wrist like a bracelet. In a brothel where names change nightly and touch is currency, this moment doesn't fit. And maybe that's why it matters. No mural records it. No ledger accounts for it. But it happened, and that's enough. You've watched the brothel beat like a strange living heart, pulsing with bodies, stories, footsteps, coins. But now you drift deeper past even the back hallway. A hidden space half forgotten. The storeroom. It's not glamorous. No frescoes, no perfume. Just shadows, crates, and broken tools. And yet here in the quiet clutter you begin to see something else, how the lupanar sustained itself in the long game. This is where you uncover the logistics behind Pompeii's most infamous brothel. The room smells like dust, vinegar, and oil. A jug has cracked in the corner, its contents seeping into a smear of something that might have once been olives. Maybe. You're not judging. You count at least 4 shelves sagging under the weight of amphora, folded cloth, and bundles of dried herbs. Not recreational, medicinal. Likely stored by the Matrona for when things went wrong. Here's your historical fact. The Roman world had a surprisingly vast knowledge of herbal remedies. Many brothels kept stocks of common treatments for pain, fever infections, and even unwanted pregnancies. They were no substitute for proper health care, but they were better than nothing. Sometimes. You open a cloth-wrapped bundle near the back. Inside, crushed silphium, or what used to be silphium. Now it's dust. Silphium was Rome's go-to contraceptive, a plant so prized it was literally harvested into extinction. There's even a rumor that Nero himself bought the last sprig and ate it. Classic Nero. You move along the shelf. Clay bottles labeled with scratched marks. You're not sure what any of them mean, but one smells sharply of copper and mint. Another makes your eyes water. A disinfectant, an aphrodisiac. In here, the line was thin. You find a mortar and pestle with residue clinging to the edges. Not decorative. Used. Daily. For what exactly? The answer is somewhere between healing and performance enhancement. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some brothels made their own mixtures to refresh clients, allegedly to restore virility, calm nerves, or extend experiences. Recipes were guarded, improvised, whispered between workers. One claimed to use fig sap, honey, and powdered date stones. You imagine the matrona mixing it herself. Not out of curiosity, out of necessity. The tools continue: sponges, oils, rags, small knives, and tucked beneath one folded cloth, a short wooden rod with strange markings. You tilt your head. Is it a charm, a measuring stick, a tool for discipline, or maybe it's just a back scratcher? You'll never know. That's the thing about history. Half of it is guessing, and the other half is stuff we pretend we didn't just guess. You notice a bundle of rolled cloth near the corner, tied with rope. It's heavier than you expect. You untie it. Inside belts. Not decorative. Not fashionable. Thick. Leather. Worn smooth. Used for restraint. Used for role play. Used for carrying amphorae, no label. No note. You set them back down carefully. Here's your fringe detail in some cases. Storage rooms doubled as rest areas, or even secret meeting spots, especially when workers needed space away from clients. Hidden in the corner of one brothel in Herculaneum was a half-finished game board scratched into the floor. 2 pebbles beside it. Someone was mid-game, when everything ended. You crouch now near the wall. There's something scratched into the plaster here, not graffiti, not for performance. A list, a tally of names and numbers. One line reads, Terentia 5 clients, 2 disputes. Another, Flora 1 returned gift. 3 complaints at wine. It's not petty. It's management. Evidence of what the matrona has always known. If you want to run a brothel, you need more than oil and charisma. You need stock, records, medicine, rope for reasons no one wants to explain. You hear footsteps above. Someone's using the roof. A moment later, a breeze slips through a crack in the ceiling, and you catch the smell of meat roasting nearby. Someone's cooking late, or maybe it's early. Time here is elastic. You glance back at the bundled cloth, the half-used jars, the measuring tools without labels. It's chaos, but it's working chaos. The kind that keeps the lights low, the wine poured, and the clients coming back. And you realize the real power of the lupanar isn't in the murals. It's here. In the forgotten storage, in the salves that soothed burns, in the powders that dulled pain, in the rags that caught blood before it reached the curtain. The workers performed. The clients pretended. But the storeroom never lied. You emerge from the storeroom into the corridor again, blinking like you've come up from underwater. The low light seems brighter now, sharper, and with it something else presses in the weight of routine. This place isn't just pulsing with energy, it's regulated, organized. Not by marble laws or senators' scrolls, but by a woman on a stool with a cracked ledger and eyes like flint. The Matrona. You've seen her before, sitting near the front, always watching, not speaking unless she must. But now you're going to understand her. Tonight, you follow her through her rounds. She starts with room 3, pulls back the curtain, says nothing. The girl inside gives a thumbs up and keeps chatting with her client, who's halfway through a story involving stolen figs and a runaway goat. The Matrona leaves them be. Room 6 next. Empty. She lifts the edge of the linen checks for stains, frowns, calls over the laundress with a sharp snap of her fingers. No anger, just order. Here's your historical fact. Matrona was a term used for women in managerial roles, especially in brothels. She wasn't the owner, usually a man. She didn't provide services. She ran the place, collected coin, handled disputes, assigned rooms, and above all, kept the ledgers straight. She moves to the rear hall, stops by a group of workers talking near the fountain. Who's had second wine, she asks, not unkindly. No one answers. She doesn't repeat herself. Instead, she nods to Vibia, then quietly swaps her with another girl for the next client. Balance restored. You notice her tools now, a wax tablet, a stylus, a pouch of coins, a small dagger tucked under her sash. Not decorative. Functional. Just in case. Here's your quirky tidbit. Matronae sometimes acted as informal judges when disputes arose between workers and clients. They memorized names, faces, tendencies. If a man lied about payment, she'd remember him. If a girl lied about a complaint, she'd know that too. There's a saying scratched into one brothel wall. The Matrona forgets nothing, especially not your debt. You trail her into the storage alcove. She checks the oil, the bandages, the bundle of silphium dust. She notices one bottle has been moved. Her eyes narrow, but she says nothing. Later she'll speak with Alia, not to punish, just to confirm. Control here isn't loud, it's persistent. She glances down at her tablet, scratches a note. Room 4-3, clients 2 with tips. Flora owes me 1 oil. A worker interrupts her quietly, nervously. There's a man asking for credit. The Matrona sighs. Name Rufus. She flips back several wax leaves, finds the name. He still owes me for wine. Should I send him away? No. But take the cheap blanket. You nearly laugh. Justice brothel style. Here's where historians argue, were Matronae former workers who earned their way into leadership, or were they appointed by owners? Some say they were retired professionals using experience to manage. Others claim they were outsiders placed for discipline, not empathy. No one agrees. But in this house, at least, it's clear. She knows every groan, every lie, every missing coin. You hear a shout from room 8. A curtain tears. A man storms out, half-dressed. She bit me. The Matrona doesn't flinch. She warned you. He throws a coin at her feet. She doesn't pick it up. Try the tavern next time, she says, turning her back. The worker inside peeks through the curtain. Too much. The Matrona smiles barely. Next time, just a pinch. She moves on. She pauses near the fountain, dips her fingers and wipes ink from her hands. Then quietly clean that up. 3 girls jump to grab a rag. She's not cruel, but she's not kind. She's effective. Here's your fringe detail. In some brothels, the Matrona was referred to in graffiti as domina or mistress, not in a suggestive way, but as a mark of authority. One line reads, "What the gods don't see, the domina will." Another simply says, "I paid her so I could see her smile." She didn't. Later, you catch her alone for a rare moment. She's seated on her stool, fixing a sandal strap with a bronze pin. Her face is tired, not old, just worn in the way stone gets smooth from weather. She notices a coin on the floor, likely dropped by someone in a hurry. She doesn't bend to pick it up. Not yet. She finishes the sandal first. Then she pockets the coin. Because in this place, everything has an order. And the Matrona, she is the order. The Matrona fades back into her post near the doorway, stylus poised again, already scanning the corridor for the next imbalance she'll quietly correct. You leave her there. Your footsteps light as you drift toward a spot most visitors never really think about. Not a room, not a slab, not a mural. You're heading to the latrine. Yes, the ancient Roman restroom. Because even in a brothel of whispered names and oiled limbs, nature does not wait. And here's where things get practical. You duck through a short archway near the back, past two linen-draped entry points, and arrive in a room that's far too proud of its own dampness. It's cleaner than you expected, mostly. A long stone bench hugs one wall interrupted by evenly spaced holes. Beneath that, a shallow channel of running water, murky and slow. Congratulations, you've found the brothel's toilet system. Here's your historical fact. Pompeii's public and private buildings often featured latrines with running water, sometimes even sponge-on-a-stick cleaning systems shared by all users. Hygiene wasn't modern, but it wasn't primitive either. They understood water flow. They understood bacteria, sort of. You spot the communal sponge now, or what remains of it. A wooden stick, a dark stain, a vibe. You quickly look away. Two workers enter behind you chatting as they prepare to freshen up before their next clients. One tosses a coin into a jar perched near the doorframe. A tip jar, no. A toilet fee. Yes, the brothel charged for bathroom use. Even workers had to contribute. You'd think one of them says as she hikes up her tunic that after 12 clients, I'd get one free pee. The other shrugs. You want mercy, go be a baker. Here's your quirky tidbit: graffiti in Pompeii's latrines is among the most vulgar and the most honest anywhere in the city. One scratch reads, "I sat here after Marcus. He stinks." Another, "This is where dreams die." And one simply says, "Don't look up." Naturally you do. Nothing, for now. You spot a small shelf beside the doorway. Oil bottles, a damp towel, a chipped mirror with lipstick marks on the edge. Yes, lipstick. Romans used a mix of red ochre and animal fat. Not long-lasting, but enough for a pout. A worker leans in to check her teeth, rubs her fingers under her eyes, exhales. She's not fixing her face for herself. It's for him. Whoever comes next. And maybe a little for the Matrona. She's watching everything. You step outside again. Back into the small courtyard beside the latrine. It's quieter here. Less decorative. No frescoes. No poetry. Just reality. A place where workers stole minutes of privacy before slipping back into personas. One girl is lighting a small bit of incense. Not for a god. For herself. To mask the smell of vinegar and fatigue. Another is washing her hands at the fountain. You watch the water catch in the folds of her fingers. She scrubs longer than needed. Not for hygiene, for time. Even pretending to be busy is better than being called too quickly. Here's where scholars still debate. Were Roman brothels required to have sanitation systems, or was it a luxury? Some argue the lupanar was an exception, well-funded, strategically located. Others believe all major brothels had plumbing, bath access, even perfume chambers. But no standard law has survived. Only pipes and echoes. You peer down the drain at the base of the courtyard. It's clogged with petals. Rose, maybe, or chamomile, from some long-forgotten offering. One worker kneels beside it now, muttering something under her breath. You realize she's not cleaning. She's praying. To whom? Not Venus, not Jupiter, just something. She kisses her palm, taps the stone, stands, walks away. No one saw, except you and the petals. And here's your fringe detail. Some workers carried personal talismans, charms they'd hide under pillows or bury behind the latrine wall. For luck, for protection, for fertility.